6,000 years ago, hippos swam in the Sahara. Not near it, inside it. Crocodiles, too, and deep, sprawling lakes. The world's largest desert wasn't always a desert. It was a lush, green savanna. Then, within a few centuries, it vanished. Sand swallowed forests, lakes, and rivers whole. But what if that collapse never happened? What if the Sahara stayed green until today, without a desert splitting Africa in two? The Great Pyramids might never have been built. Humanity's greatest civilizations might have grown somewhere else entirely. But this green paradise hides a dark secret. A thriving Sahara might mean the death of the Amazon. Let's find out how. Picture the Sahara, 11,000 years ago. Not sand, grassland, rivers, and forest. Scientists call this the African Humid Period. Monsoon rains reached deep into the desert's heart. Giraffes, elephants, and hippos roamed freely. Rock art still shows people swimming here. At the center of it all, a massive lake. Lake Megachad, one of history's largest inland seas. It may have covered over 100,000 square miles. A lake that size doesn't just sit there. It changes the climate around it completely. It kept the region humid, stable, self-sustaining. So what caused all this to end? Not a meteor, not a war, Earth's own orbit. Earth slowly wobbles on its axis over time. Scientists call this wobble orbital precession. It shifts exactly when monsoon rains fall each year. Around 5,000 years ago, the wobble shifted again. Monsoon rains weakened, then nearly stopped. In some regions, the collapse was stunningly fast. Full transformation to desert in a century or two. Lake Megachad shrank to a fraction of its size. The grassland dried. The rivers vanished. People who once lived across the region had nowhere to go, except one place, the Nile Valley, a narrow strip of guaranteed water and soil. Thousands of years of scattered culture suddenly compressed into one crowded, fertile river valley. That pressure helped forge something new, a centralized state. Within centuries, that state built the pyramids. Now imagine that wobble shifted differently, just slightly enough to change everything. What if the monsoon rains never fully retreated? Lake Megachad wouldn't have shrunk. It would have held. And a lake that size feeds its own weather. More water means more evaporation, more rainfall. More rainfall means more vegetation, more moisture retained. A self-reinforcing loop, keeping the region green. Grassland would keep grassland alive, year after year. The tipping point simply never tips. No collapse, no abrupt desert transformation. The Sahara stays what it already was, alive. 3.6 million square miles of it, an area roughly the size of the United States. Not sand, forest, savanna, and standing water. The Nile Valley never becomes a forced refuge, because there's nowhere people are forced to flee to it from. Populations stay spread across a vast green interior. No single valley absorbs centuries of compressed culture. No single, unified kingdom to concentrate that labor. No pressure cooker forging one centralized power. The pyramids, as we know them, never rise. Not because Egypt vanishes, because it never gets squeezed. Different pressures, different history, different world entirely. So what does that different world actually look like? Fast forward to today, the year 2026. In this world, there is no Sahara Desert, just an enormous green belt across northern Africa, 3.6 million square miles of fertile land. In our world, that space is nearly empty. In this one, it's arguably the most valuable land on Earth. Imagine the world's largest breadbasket sitting right there. Grain, livestock, and produce exported across the globe. Africa wouldn't just participate in the global economy, it could plausibly anchor it. Trade routes would run straight through the interior, not around a desert, through fertile, connected land. Cities would rise scattered across that green expanse. not funneled into one narrow river valley. Power would likely stay decentralized, spread wide. No single empire dominating the whole region for millennia. Now, here's where it gets more complicated. Would a greener Africa mean a cooler planet? You'd expect it to. The reality is murkier. Deserts reflect sunlight back into space. That cools things. Remove that reflection, and you'd expect more warming. But plants also cool the air as they release moisture. That process, evapotranspiration, can offset a lot of that heat. Recent research found it can even outweigh the warming. So the honest answer is, it depends. It depends on rainfall, soil, and regional water balance. Climate scientists are still actively debating the net effect. This isn't a simple story of more green, less heat. It's a genuinely open scientific question. Meanwhile, something else would be different too. 2 massive equatorial forests instead of one, the Amazon, and now a second one in Africa. More rainfall recycling, more carbon pulled from the sky. On paper, that sounds like a purely good thing. But the Sahara wasn't just empty space, it was doing something, quietly, the whole time. Something almost no one thinks about. Something that reaches all the way to South America. Because it turns out, the desert's harshness has a purpose, and removing it comes with a hidden cost. Every year, in our real world, something remarkable happens. Millions of tons of Saharan dust drift across the Atlantic. It lands, of all places, on the Amazon rainforest. That dust is loaded with phosphorus, a critical nutrient. Amazon soil is naturally poor in it. Heavy rainfall constantly washes phosphorus straight out of the ground. Saharan dust replaces almost exactly what gets washed away. It's a fragile, cross-continental balancing act. Desert dust, quietly feeding a rainforest 4,000 miles away. So what happens if that desert turns green? The dust stops. The replacement stops with it. Over time, that could mean real nutrient stress. But here's where we have to be careful. Stress isn't the same as guaranteed collapse, and the story is more complicated than one variable. Not all of the Amazon depends on that dust equally. The western Amazon gets nutrients from a different source. Sediment washed down from the Andes Mountains. It's really the older eastern basin most at risk. And here's the uncomfortable part. This is already happening. In our actual world, right now, without any alternate history. Parts of the eastern Amazon are already losing ground. Deforestation and rising heat are already stressing that same region. Some parts already emit more carbon than they absorb. Add a lost fertilizer source on top of that. And you're compounding a crisis that's already begun, not creating a new one from nothing. That distinction matters. Science should stay honest about it. The Sahara's harshness, it turns out, quietly protects distant ecosystems, even one built entirely by accident over thousands of years. So would a green Sahara have stopped the pyramids? Almost certainly, yes, at least the ones we know. Would it have made Africa the world's breadbasket? Very plausibly. Would it have doomed the Amazon completely? Probably not, but it likely wouldn't have helped. Every desert, every rainforest is quietly connected. Change one, and the effects ripple across the planet. Sometimes the harshest places are holding everything together. This is Oviora. Keep wondering.